Hi, my name is Brad. Welcome to the High Performance Homestead. This is the first video in the building of our home here on our property. My wife, my son, and I bought 20 acres out here in East Texas a couple of years ago. We've been slowly getting the infrastructure going. We've got fencing finished. We carved an 1,800-foot driveway through the woods to get back to where we wanted. We've got our well dug, we've got our septic done, and we are starting on the house now. So we're going to be building a barn dominium kind of house. It's a steel structure, steel dimensional lumber, I guess you could say. It's not really lumber, but it's steel. But it's just not red iron steel. It's steel 2x4s and 2x3s set on 4-foot centers, and we'll go up with it and sheath it and put the steel panels on. And it's going to be red and gray because my wife wanted a barn looking kind of house. So that's what we're building. So we're starting this video off getting prepared for concrete. I'm doing every bit of this all by myself with a little help from my wife and son, but most of this will be all by myself, and basically just showing that a simple guy that I work on airplanes for a living. I don't know how to do all this stuff, but I'm figuring it out. I've done a little bit of construction in the past. Never done anything with steel. I've never done concrete by myself. Anything bigger than a small pad, definitely never for a home. So we're going to start this process off by getting the pad ready. It has been leveled. I've done the under slab plumbing already, and so now we're just getting ready to prepare for concrete. So we're going to start doing the form boards, getting all that ready to go in this video. And then in the next one, we'll just continue on with that. I've got a lot of footage and there is a lot to do. So thanks for joining me. I hope you stick with it. And thank you for watching. Welcome to the High Performance Homestead. I wanted to take a little time and describe what I was doing here, what I'm doing in this video, and talk about the plans and how things may have changed a little bit. So now I am taking apart what I've already put together. So I put together the form boards around the entire building at 35 feet wide, 65 feet long, because that's how big the building is. And I used that to determine exactly where my plumbing fixtures were going to be. So I needed to be able to measure from one wall to another, measure out from another wall to figure out exactly where a toilet flange would be, where the shower and the tub and the drain from the upstairs, all that needs to be located in accordance with the walls of the building. During that time, a friend of mine came over. He actually loaned me the excavator that I used for all that. And he said, well, you're going to do a sheet ledge on your concrete, right? I was like, all right, explain this to me. So normally, and the way these plans are here, they've got the edge of the concrete here, and it's just a regular 90-degree edge. The studs from the building are coming down. They've spaced it out 1 inch from the edge, and that's for the hat channels that are acting as purlins. because they stick out an inch. And then the sheet metal for the panels comes straight down the side and will just overlap the side of this. Well, looking at the profile of the metal or the steel panels coming down, they've got these 3/4 inch bumps right here, and then a couple of bumps here. You've seen it on other metal buildings, these vertical members that come down. Well, at the bottom, it's just open. And he said, well, you really don't want that to just be open, and rats and mice and whatever can just climb right up on top into that channel there. So what he suggested was to do a sheet ledge. So the concrete coming across and then down 1.5 inches, over 1.5 inches, and then down 1.5 inches, to where now we're spaced over here. The stud is coming down, the hat channel is right there, and then the sheet metal comes down, overlaps that, and has a butt end to it to keep things from coming up in it. And it finishes it a little bit better. And then over and come on down. So we've dropped it down 1.5 inches, over 1.5 inches, and then back down again. Well, then I also decided that I would be adding insulation to underneath the slab and wrapping around the sides of the slab where it comes up. So that insulation is 1.5 inches thick. So I need enough space now to have 1.5 inches of insulation. So my form boards at 35 and 65 are no longer correct. So now I have to extend each form board out 1.5 inches for the insulation, and then another 1.5 inches for this sheet ledge. So 3 inches. So I had to take apart all the form boards like you see in the video there, and I've made sure that my corner pins were set. I just used rebar for the corner pins. Make sure those were set and square, and then set string lines between all of those. Then I just measured at each spot, took a tape measure and measured out 3 inches, and that's where I put my form board stake. So the stake would be there, then the form board. It's actually more than that. I'm sorry, it was 4.5 inches. Let's redo that. So it's 4.5 inches because of the form board. So I measured out from that string line 4.5 inches. That's where I put the form board stake. The form board is 1.5 inches because I used 2x6s. Then 1.5 inches of insulation, then 1.5 inches for the sheet ledge there. So that's 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches, that's 4.5 inches. So I had to do 4.5 inches on each side and both ends of the building to accommodate for the form boards and the insulation and the sheet ledge. So that's the reason for this portion of the video. I did not get video on doing the plumbing. So I had just done the same thing. I set corner posts up, made sure they were square, and then set up form boards to be able to measure off of to get my plumbing where it's supposed to be. So setting those corner pins up properly, needed to make sure that you at least start with one corner that you know is going to be good. So I started with one corner pin like that. I measured down 65 feet, measured over 35 feet, up 65 feet, again measured that 35 feet. And so I should have a square. Obviously this isn't square. But how do you check that? Because you could have a parallelogram or anything like that. It could be a trapezoid for that matter. So there are two ways you can check square. Many of you probably already know this, but you can just do the X method. So you just measure from one pin across to the opposite pin, see what that measurement is. Say it's 175 inches. If you come over here and measure from that top pin to this pin and say it's 174 inches, well now we know obviously this side is longer than this one and our building is racked like that. So we have to figure out a way to get rid of that. And you just continue to make adjustments. If I know that this 35 by 35 is correct and the 65 by 65 is correct, or whatever size your square or rectangle is, then you just move both pins accordingly. So in this case, this is the long one, so I would move these up a little bit and just keep fiddling with it until you get the same measurement on the X there. So 175 one way, 175 the other way. Obviously, if this was 175 and this was 174, once you go to moving things around, this is going to end up at basically 174 and a half, and this one's going to be 174 and a half. And once you've got those two perfect, you know that you are perfectly square. Now, once it comes time, and of course there'll be another video on the interior stuff, but that's for a big square. If you want to do, say, a room, you got a smaller room that's square or rectangular, you could still do that. You can go from corner to corner. But what if that room has a little cutout in it, like that? Well, now we can't go to that corner and back to measure it again. So, but we can measure each corner, and they use the 3, 4, 5 method. 3, 4, 5, or Pythagorean's theorem. So if we measure over here 3 feet, we measure up there 5 feet. Well, now the hypotenuse here, measure over 3 feet, measure up 4 feet. Well, the hypotenuse should be 5 feet. If it's not, if it's greater than 5 feet, then we know we have an obtuse angle. So it would be more like that. If it's less than 5 feet, we would have an acute angle, more like that. So we can use that 3, 4, 5 method. We can go all the way down to inches on that, 3 inches by 4 inches by 5 inches. We could do 6 inches. We could do 6 feet by 8 feet by 10 feet to make sure it's right. It's basically just using a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So if you've got just using this, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16. So 9 and 16 is 25. And then the square root of 25 is 5. So that's kind of how we come up with the 5 number. So you can use any number you want. You could do 20 feet by, well, that's going to be too hard. But you could do, let's get out, I don't have my calculator with me, but you could do anything you want. You can measure out 20 feet, measure out 30 feet. You just do 20 foot squared, 30 foot squared, add those together, you get your number, and do the square root of that. That should be the length of the hypotenuse. You can do that on this corner, this corner, this corner, this corner, that corner, and that corner. If all those are right, you got yourself a square room. So luckily, I've got a rectangle for a house. It's very simple, little barn dominium style thing. So I was able to easily just measure from corner to corner. So then I just did string lines. I wrapped string around there, wrapped string around there, around there, around there. Then I was able to measure out from here 4.5 inches to get my form boards. And then I've got a form board, a piece of insulation, and then the sheet ledge before the concrete starts where I put my house on top of. And that is as easy as that. It just takes a lot of running back and forth trying to do all this, especially when you're by yourself. So it's pretty basic stuff, but it's simple to do, just not easy. Time to set the form boards. So we're going to use the rotating laser here and figure out where the deep spots are and figure out where we want to set our form boards. So we'll slow this down just a little bit. I have been, as you saw, was looking with the laser level on how to find the low levels and the high levels of the ground before getting ready for the concrete. So I found the highest level, and that's where I put the 2x6, my first 2x6. And then measured up 5.5 inches from that, because it's a 2x6 and 2x6s are 5.5 inches. I then set my laser level to put a steady beat whenever I was at that, whenever I'm on top of that form board. So as I continue on here, I've got stakes, one on each end of the form boards and one in the middle for support. And so there I have I'm putting in one screw and double checking to make sure that it is level. So I'm putting my stick on top of there, getting a solid beep, and that tells me that that is the exact same level as the first board that I put down. And there I'm double checking it again. So as I move forward, I will be able to just put the stick on the measuring, the laser stick on the top of the form boards, and then raise the form board up until it gives a solid beep. At which point I know that I'm at the same height as the first one that I did. So then I can put a screw in and double check everything, make sure it's good, and that way I'll know that it's all at the same height. So this ends up being, the top of this board is the top of the sheet ledge that I'm doing. And then later on we'll put, in a future video, we'll end up putting another 2x6 on top of it, which will create that extra 1.5 inch rise to get to the top of the concrete pad where the house will actually sit. So just for now, that's how this is all working here. There's probably a better way of doing it. There's probably a right way of doing it. But me just trying to figure things out, this is what I figured out how to do. So I've just got, using the seesaw method here. I got the one side correct, and then putting the stick on there, raising the form board up until it beeps, which I'll do here in a second. I'm going to put a screw in just to get one started. So, because I've only got two hands. So I get a screw started right here, and we'll put the stick back on it. We'll get a solid beep telling me that the top of that is at the same level as the top of the first one that I put down. And then I'll just hold it in place, grab the screw gun, screw that sucker in, and then we'll put the stick back on it, double check, make sure nothing has moved. And then I'll just go back, double check the other side, and once everything is good for that one board, I'll go ahead and put another couple of screws in place to hold it in and keep it steady. And I'll just keep doing this all the way around till I get back to where I started, so that at the top of every single form board, it should be dead flat, dead level with everything else. We'll speed her back up here until the end of the video. All right, well, that's about it. We are basically finished with the first portion of the form boards, and next time we will start getting the stakes ready and get all of the kickers and everything to support those form boards so that whenever we pour concrete in it, it doesn't just blow apart. So stay tuned for that if you want to see the rest of it, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.